I get asked a lot of the time as to what some of my favorite common house plants are, or the common house plants that I would always repurchase. This is a video that I explain just that. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So this is going to be a bit of a mini-series, and in this video I'm obviously going to talk about the plants that I would repurchase. The following video, same week, is going to be about the plants that I would never repurchase. So you get a mix of both. But before I dive into the plants that I would repurchase, few things, a bit of housekeeping. So these are obviously going to be my opinions based on my experiences, and I'll talk you through my experiences with these plants and why, in this specific case, I would always repurchase them. This does not mean that I am here to offend anybody's favorite plant or to tell you if you've had bad experiences with this plant is that you should retry this. We all are on our own journeys, and I just thought I would share some of mine in case it would help some of you out there. But without further ado, and now that the caveats are all out the way, let's dive into it. So surprising even myself with this one, and I do have an example here to show you, one of the common houseplants, and these are all going to be common houseplants, and again, the caveat here whilst I drip everywhere with this plant, because I've only just watered it today, for the people that have been here for a while. The struggle is real. But this is a plant that surprised me because I had not the best of experiences with these types of plants in the past. However, I have tried them recently and I have had better success with them, which means that in my humblest of opinions, I would always repurchase these plants. And by that, I'll explain why. So my previous experiences with a lot of Aglaonemas is especially the more colorful varieties. So I think this is, if I'm not mistaken, the Aglaonema Guave or Guava Pink. And anything that's colorful like this, I've also got the Apple Fantasy up the top there. And both of these plants live at the top of my shelves. That's one of the hints. But I've always struggled, especially with these colorful Aglaonemas, to keep them happy, because a lot of what you can find online in terms of their care is they are good for low light positions, and you need to keep them evenly moist, and all of the things that is usually said about these plants online, I have gone in entirely the opposite direction. And I've had good success with them. And as long as I know what works for me in my care and in my conditions, I'm going to keep doing the same thing, because if it's not broke, don't fix it. So what have I done, and why would I always repurchase this? Why would I always repurchase this? I mean, look at it. Look at the plant. It is super pretty. And few reasons. One, it doesn't grow super fast. So, and I know for some people that's a deal breaker, but I actually prefer plants that maybe don't go like the clappers because I don't have that much space for them. So the fact that this doesn't grow super fast in my conditions and the way that I want to grow plants, that's a plus. It might not be for you, but they don't grow super fast. They are exceptionally colorful. You can get so many different varieties of this plant, and in my care, what I have found works is as bright indirect light as I can give them, and I fully let them dry out. So as I said, many different varieties. If you don't want the super colorful ones, and I know this one is one of the trickier ones, I'm going to be honest, the Aglaonema Pictum Tricolor, and I do have that one as well. Let me see if I can bring that down to show you. So the Aglaonema Pictum Tricolor is one that is kind of colloquially known as a bit of the camouflage plant. And this can be tricky because, and you might be able to see from the back here, it can tend to go a lot of really leggy, kind of usually bare stems, because it will lose its lower leaves and it kind of ends up looking a bit like a palm tree. And as long as you go into this specific Aglaonema knowing that, that's less of an issue. So as long as you're comfortable with that, that's okay. But even this, where I've tried it in different positions, I've tried it in more consistent light, because I knew that all of the conditions that this specific Aglaonema, which is one of the more challenging ones, I will say, likes, I just went, you know what, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, like I said earlier on. Why give this any different care to anything else? Because I have been told that it is challenging. Put it where all the rest of my Aglaonemas in my conditions seem to work and see what happens. Lo and behold, it is keeping most, if not all of its leaves. I don't think I've lost any leaves on this just yet. I mean, this is a newer plant, but it's doing really, really well. Ask me again in winter, that's going to be different. But again, winter is even more important to have these in a brighter light, I find. Obviously, in the summer, they'll dry out a lot faster, but by and large, not troublesome plants. The next one on my list, I cannot pick up to show you. You probably, I'm also trying something new. You might see the exposure of this video going up and down a bit because the day I decided to try a new lens, it's kind of cool for the people that are into lenses. This is a lens that kind of almost makes it so that the camera has got sunglasses on, especially because it gets so bright at the moment. But obviously today being a typical UK day, I'm getting sun coming in and sun coming out, going out behind the clouds. So I'm having to keep tweaking it. But it also means that my wide angle lens isn't usable for this time of the year. It's gonna be a bit of a tighter shot, sorry. But this is the other plant that I would always repurchase as a common house plant. And this, for the eagle-eyed, and hopefully you can see it in the screen, is the Ficus elastica. I'm not going to be the only person talking about why a Ficus elastica is great, but I've even got the variegated form. I think this is the Taniki, if I'm not mistaken. Never had any problems with that plant. Is it the fastest plant that I've got growing in my space? No. Do I need it to be the fastest growing plant in my space? Also no. It's absolutely fine. It can take its time. And it is one of those things that as long as you kind of get the care of it, and to be fair, for the people again that have been here for a while, they'll be surprised that I'm putting a ficus on this list, and that should tell you something. Because, and for the newbies, I have never had great experiences with ficuses. They are the type of plant that I will struggle with almost all the time, purely because I can't get their watering right, I don't get their light levels right. All of these things just contribute to the fact that these plants I find quite challenging. Not this one specifically, not the actual Ficus elastica, but other ficuses. And it is one of those things that I will say the reason why this did make it onto this list is because it's much more straightforward from other ficuses. And by that, what do I mean? I mean that as long as you keep it in one position, this is ficuses by and large, and even the elastica, not as much as other ficuses, they don't like to be moved around. They're not a plant that's going to be, I mean, most plants generally might have a bit of an issue if you move them around all the time. Ficuses will really tell you that quite quickly. The other thing is consistency with their watering. And as long as you get the consistency right with most ficuses, and again, I can't talk from experience for most of them because I struggle with them, but for these kind of much larger ficuses, much more kind of commonly available ones like the elastica, and I'm not just talking about the variegated Taniki here, there's a whole host of different Ficus elasticas out there. By and large, most of their care is quite similar. I've even got the, Scheveriana, the variegated one, and I'll see if I can find a picture and put it here. And that same exact care. If anything, that needs a touch more light, but it's not necessary. It just needs a touch more light for the variegation to pop a bit more. Now, what I will say about these plants, and it's something that even though I would always have them in my care, I would make sure to have for them is as much light as possible. As I've mentioned many a times before in my videos, in Greece where I'm from, you get these literally growing as pavement plants. So you know how in big cities all over the world, you get big trees that are kind of, I don't know what they're called, there's a specialist point in the pavements where they've planted trees to provide shade to everybody. We have Ficus elasticas doing exactly that. And a lot of the municipalities around Greece, so that tells you quite how much light they can take. So as long as I've got it getting a decent amount of light, and if I can get it top-down lighting, even if it means a bit of a grow light, absolutely fine, has never failed me. This specific elastica, I bought it when it was about this big, It is probably just over my height, so probably about 5'10", 5'11". It's probably just a bit taller than me at this point. So I'm 5'10", that's probably 5'10", 5'11", maybe a bit more. And for the people that don't know feet, because it took me a while to get used to it in this country, I'm about 1 meter 77. That's 1 meter 77, 1 meter 80, 185, somewhere around there. And I have had that plant from that size going on 6 or 7 years. So not the fastest, but grown consistently, grown in every single household that I've had it, in all different conditions, without skipping a beat. So forever, I will always have a Ficus elastica. It's a staple. The next one is annoying because I don't have one currently in my collection, but I have grown one over the years, and I do need to find it and get it back into my care. I will say, I'll put a picture here. I will say that this is a plant that I would love to find and get back into my care, but it is a plant that might not be commonly found everywhere in the world. Like even here, it sometimes can take a while for the plant to come back onto the market. And by a while, I mean usually within the year, you'll get it coming out in drips and drabs, but there's usually a good point of the year where in the UK, and I would imagine Europe, they come out because I'm assuming they're released by the growers. And it is the Philodendron painted lady. Might not be the most common thing everywhere. You can probably find other philodendrons much more commonly, but you can still find this here relatively easily. It doesn't cost an awful lot of money. It photographs like rubbish in relation to what it's actually like in real life. And I always like to say the story of, I went with a planty friend, a local planty friend, and we went to a local garden center, the one that I've mentioned many a times before. It's her local garden center as well. And she saw this plant for the first time in there, and I was there to experience her first time seeing it in person. And she was just like, oh wow, like this. And she left with that plant. She bought it on the spot because she's just like, this, she's like, I was never taken with it either in videos or in photos, and I just never got the hype. And she's just like, seeing it now, I'm just like, I get it. I actually get it because it's so unique. The name is probably the best description that you have for this plant. It does, every single leaf looks like it's been painted with like an oil brush or anything like that. It's a very difficult thing to explain until you see it with your own eyes. So if you ever come across it and maybe you're a bit further away in the plant store and you're not seeing it, but you know that there's a painted lady there, don't judge it at a distance. Go close to that plant and you will understand exactly why I will always try to grow that in my space. The other things that work in its favor, it's adaptable. Bright and direct light, I know we all sound like broken records, but it's what it needs. It's not particularly fussy with the watering. It's not particularly fussy with fertilizer. I didn't have an awful lot of pests on it, if I remember correctly. It wasn't a pest magnet. It's adaptable and very different. It doesn't grow super fast. It doesn't necessarily need a moss pole. I never grew it on a moss pole. I always had it on janky support sticks. The leaves still got big, absolutely fine. Beautiful, beautiful plant. And something different and unique. And it's one of those things that, again, you can surprise your friends by just going, oh, come and see this. This is really, really cool. And actually getting them up close and showing them. And they'd be like, this can't be real. It is. It is such a cool plant. There's very few plants that have got kind of not just coloration, but patternation like that in nature that are very, very different. So another example that I can think of, which isn't a philodendron, the Calathea mosaica or the Calathea network. It's a very unique patterning. It's not exactly the same or even vaguely similar to the painted lady, but it is something so different from a lot of the other textures and patternations that you might get on a lot of houseplants that it does make you take pause and just go, ooh, this is nice and easy to grow. And definitely a plant that you can get quite large as long as you've got a bit of time to go with it. But again, in my experience, not a particularly difficult plant. And yes, I would always try to have it in my house, in my collection at any given time. Watch me, I need to find one this year. The next one is a plant that I've got in my Epipremnum corner. Obviously, it couldn't have been a top common house plant list without me having at least a singular pothos variety within this list. And it is, and I'll get a picture here purely because it is growing ferally. It's in between things. I cannot move that from there. But it is the Pothos N'Joy. And there's a lot of people that will always be searching for the Mandula pothos, and I get it. And I think somebody said that the N'Joy is closely related to the Mandula pothos or something along those lines, or there's some form of link between the two of them. I find the Mandula pothos quite temperamental. Out of a lot of pothos type plants, a lot of Epipremnum type plants that I have grown, with the exception of the skeleton key, which I have found the most challenging out of all of the Epipremnums, by far, the Mandula pothos isn't the easiest one. Conversely, again in my experience, and I haven't just grown it in here, I've grown it in multiple houses. My singular plant is now 3 or 4 plants, just because I keep cutting and putting back into other pots, and it's just a lot of pothos N'Joys, and I probably have that N'Joy in my care for at least 6 or 7 years. It's again one of those, at this point, I'm probably going to start calling them some of my heirloom plants. They've been around for a few years, and I'll always keep it there because it's easy. It's got really interesting variegation on its leaves, and it is an easy pothos type plant. It's an easy Epipremnum. It's not a particularly difficult Epipremnum. Do I give it the best light? No. Do I still get loads of those variegated leaves? Yes. And that's the interesting thing that I will say. A lot of the times with the golden pothos, which is the bog standard pothos that you can get everywhere, if you don't give it enough light, you will eventually lose the yellowing, the yellow variegation that you get on that plant. Pothos N'Joy, I have found even with slightly lower light conditions, it will keep very bright, creamy white sectoral sections within its leaves without many problems. Does it ever get absolutely huge? No. Have I ever grown that specific plant on a pole to see if it will size up? No, but I would imagine it would. I'm pretty sure I've seen people grown a Mandula pothos on a moss pole and it's got absolutely huge. I think something does happen. Maybe the variegation diminishes a bit, but I don't know, I'm not entirely sure. And another plant that I have grown super successfully in my space, this one I definitely can't move. I'll see if I can put a picture or a video here, because it's growing just outside of the door that I come into the conservatory, but in regular household conditions, directly underneath a grow light, which is my Strelitzia nicolai, so the white bird of paradise. And yes, for the people that have been here for a while, I did grow it. I did purchase it. I've grown it for quite a few years now. I did purchase it quite large. Has it had any issues? Absolutely none. And to be fair, relatively forgiving on less than ideal lighting conditions. And by that, I mean that I have grown it, I currently am growing it under a grow light, and it's doing exceptionally well. But I've also grown it in better lighting conditions, and it's done great, basically. And it's very much a statement plant. It's the type of plant that whenever somebody comes in here, and I've mentioned this on previous videos, it's just like, oh, was it The Land of the Triffids or The Day of the Triffids? I can't remember what the book is. I still need to read that. Thank you for everybody who kind of gave me a bit of a brief explanation as to what the book is about. It does sound really interesting. It's on my TBR list for this summer, so at some point I'm going to get around to it. But it is one of those things that is truly spectacular. Now, I will say, do not purchase it if you think that you're going to be able to get it to bloom indoors. It is notoriously difficult to get to bloom indoors. I have never got mine to bloom indoors, and I'm talking about the white bird of paradise, not the Strelitzia reginae, which is the orange bird of paradise, I think. That one is slightly easier. I think that one's still not straightforward to try to get to bloom indoors, but that you'll probably have more luck with that one than you will with the nicolai. Now, one thing I will say is it grows, and when it grows fast, it grows large, so you need to have the space to put it in there, but it is definitely a statement plant. And it's the type of plant that, as I said, it's got that wow factor because it does feel a bit like you've got a mini banana plant in your living room, and that's where I've got it. It's right next to the dining room table. But it's It is one that, because it grows the way that it does, and because it can get quite large, anybody who doesn't have the best lighting conditions, Matthew from Plant Daddy podcast, I miss those guys and I miss the podcast, but he had a good trick that he was doing with his, and he would call it recharging it in the summer. So he'd have it in less than ideal lighting conditions in the winter, and then in the summer he'd take it out into the garden and get blasted with light. It obviously transitioned that into brighter light conditions, and it would recharge it for the year, and he would move it back in for the winter and rinse and repeat. And I've done that a few times, and it's worked like a charm as well. At the moment, I've got a really, really decent Grow Gang light at the top there. I think I might even have a discount code. If I have, I'll add it at the top there. But it is a plant that has done exceptionally well for me. Exceptionally well for me. As I said, it does grow fast. The roots are super thick, so do expect that this is going to be a plant that you might have to repot with the assistance of somebody else. Think, because that's probably going to be easier for people to think large Monstera deliciosa, and when you need to repot that and it's in a big pot and you're just like, I'm going to need somebody to help me with this, because this is going to be a bit of a mission, which is great because it means you also don't fiddle around with repotting these plants super, super often. But it is something to bear in mind. But yes, that is my entire list. It's not my entire list, but it's my top 5 at the moment. If you want me to continue this specific video and give you my next top 5, I can. But as I said, do keep an eye out later on this week. It'll be the plants that I would never repurchase. Common house plants that I would never repurchase again. And I can explain my reasoning. That one might be a bit spicier. I ain't gonna lie. But yes, tell me what your thoughts are. Do you agree with me on some of these plants? Have your experiences been different? I want to hear all of it. And I think it's important for everybody to not just hear Memo's opinion about this. Hear your opinions. Tell me if you've struggled. Tell me if you've had good successes with these plants. And maybe give us some of your top ones down below. You might even go, ooh, that's a plant that I hadn't considered because I thought X, Y, and Z, but this person says this might be quite interesting, might be worth a try. Do let us all know down in the comments below and let's have that conversation. But yes, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.